I am a woman's bonnet from the 1700s. I was made by specialized milliners who established the millinery profession by taking the hat-making process out of homes and putting it into millinery shops. As a bonnet, I was made to serve several different purposes. While I'm meant to keep hair tidy and preserve modesty by covering a woman's hair and face, I'm also meant to protect women from harsh weather, keep dirt out of hair, and prevent the spread of lice. I'm used both in and outdoors. Inside, I'm the fashion accessory, style tool, and modesty protector, and outside is where I keep dirt out of hair and protect women from the weather. Due to my adaptable nature, I can be worn at most any time. This adaptability allows me to fit the mold of any woman, depending on how she chooses to style me. I'm a fairly simple bonnet that was most likely used on a daily basis, and I'm fairly undecorated, so it's safe to assume that the woman who wore me was from a middle or working class. My user most likely was busy in their day-to-day tasks, so it's probably worn for my functionality. Myself and other bonnets of the time were primarily worn by white women as we were brought to America from Europe. We were worn by all social classes, but were mostly associated with the middle or working class. A certain stereotype developed to describe the women who wore us. As hats came into style, women who wanted to remain modest opted to wear bonnets in public. We thus acquired the reputation of being worn only by dowagers, and were no longer a part of fashion anywhere except for the prairies. While we became tools for preserving modesty, we later re-emerged in popularity for our stylistic and aesthetic value, and continued to evolve over time as fashionable and adaptable accessories, especially as there became less of a need for bonnet wearers to go outside or do physical work. In addition to these fashion changes, political change began to take place in Maryland. First, Baltimore was founded in 1729. Then, Annapolis became the nation's capital in 1783. Maryland became the 7th official state in 1778, and finally, Maryland passed a law forbidding the importation of slaves for sale in 1796. During the 1700s, however, slavery was still very prevalent. In certain ways, I perpetuated social differences between white women and enslaved African women, and that we both used different types of garments to achieve the same result. Enslaved African women wore distinctive head wraps, which served similar purposes as me, like covering women's heads, protecting them from the weather, and stopping the spread of lice. Yet there was a distinction between me and the head wrap. I was decorated and made in a millinery, while a head wrap was fashioned by a slave out of scrap fabric. While I mimicked European style, the head wrap brought African tradition to America and served the enslaved women as a familiar and culturally significant garment. While this piece of culture was important for enslaved women, it subtly helped create a difference between the social perception of white and African women. My creation in the millinery workplace also perpetuated these social differences. This industry had many successful white women involved in the hat-making and designing process, and it empowered them in that it allowed them to work and make money on their own. White women were able to have their own jobs and professions, while African women were still limited to slavery and were unable to financially support themselves or socially progress. This forward movement of one group compared to the involuntary fixed nature of the other created a wider gap between the social impressions of African and white women.